Well, hey there. Welcome to this week's exciting edition of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
Judy Nathans.
And today is
September 18th.
18th,
Yes.
2018.
Oh, a lot of 18s there.
That's right, yeah. We had a city council meeting last night.
First since
one.
July 30th, although there's
Yeah.
been a number of committee hearings and ordinance meetings.
And as we were talking about some last week was like a really busy week. It's sort of like all the summer recess all sort of gloms onto 1 week
Yeah.
of lots and lots of public meetings. I don't know about how many you made it to, but
Wednesday was a record. I went to a recycling meeting, and then I watched the electric mobility one, transportation.
scooters?
That was televised,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
was very helpful. And then I went over to the strategy, retail strategy one,
Which I
where
was
I
at,
met you,
yeah.
and then we walked over to Envision Cambridge.
right.
So there weren't totally city ones, but
Yes.
well, three of them. Well, I guess they all are.
Yeah, so I guess I did like three
But
as
you
well.
also, in the last month or so, you went to the residential parking one, which I did not go to.
Yeah. And so it was pretty busy. And actually,
And
that
flat roof one. Did you go to that?
I did not go to it, but I'm
But it was-
interested in it.
Right.
So anyway, and that's still under discussion, but we'll talk
That's
about
a
that a little bit.
petition.
That's a zoning petition.
Okay.
But it was pretty jazzy last Wednesday with the
Oh.
scooters, the
Oh, my
retail
God.
strategies, the vacant storefronts, Envision Cambridge.
Yeah.
Actually, the one thing I couldn't make it to, there was also a simultaneous meeting
Oh,
about
planning?
the Inman Square
Oh,
reconfiguration.
right, which came up last night.
Which was that
That-
neighborhood long-term planning.
Right across the street at 6:30, right.
Right.
That sounded
Yeah.
interesting. I'm sorry I missed that
So
one.
we have to
but,
perfect the art of cloning. I need to
Yeah.
have like 3 of me some of these
Well, I
days.
know the one that Jan led is televised. It's on video.
That was the
and
electric scooters?
Yeah, and
Right.
it was very helpful because they did, what I didn't know, do you know there's like 12 scooter companies in the country?
Um,
Can you even name them? They all
I
have
only know
one
Lime.
syllables. Bird, lime, spin, lift, jump, scoot, skip,
Good.
Hopra, Ofo, I've heard of that one, Razor, Ride Cell, Us Scooters, and then Uber's getting in on it, right?
yeah, that's one I think I do find kind of interesting how
Yes.
Lyft and Uber, which are
Exactly.
we think of as like car.
They're gonna be
Yes.
driverless cars. They're
Yeah.
gonna be driving cars, and they're gonna be electric scooters and maybe bikes. I don't know.
Well, they're trying to.
Lime, isn't Lime also
I
bikes?
think Lime may be very well.
I get
either-
confused between Lime and ant bikes because ant
Right.
bikes are lime colored.
That's right.
I-
Actually, one thing that's very interesting is just to sort of show you the aggressiveness of some of these
Yeah.
companies. I saw something interesting on the way. I think it was on the way back on last Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday. Or maybe, well, anyway, it was this
Doesn't
past
matter.
week.
Yeah.
So I'm heading home, and and there had been the meetings a day or so before about the
Right.
scooters and and how they're not legal in Cambridge, and the ant
Yeah.
bikes and the Lime bikes, they're
Right.
not yet legal, they're not permitted, whatever, right? But these companies basically just drop them in and then say, go ahead, what are you going to do
Well,
about
the
it?
scooters are different. The ant bikes and the lime bikes are coming from towns that do not have the blue bikes. So,
Oh, maybe.
oh,
Oh, maybe, but I don't
wait,
think
what
so.
Really?
Well, I think they actually dropped a few of them on the MIT campus. They dropped a few because when you see
Oh.
bunches of them together,
Good
that's
point.
not because
See, I've
they
never
just
seen
arrived.
bunches. I've just seen
Yeah.
one where
So I've
this
seen
guy
them.
came from Arlington.
Oh,
This-
I've seen them. I've seen
Okay.
them. And
Well, that's
and
tricky.
so one thing I thought was like a nice little FU to
Uh-oh.
the community development department. So they're saying like, well, it's not legal. We have an exclusivity with the Hubway, which is now Blue Bikes and whatever. So they dropped 2 of them right there in the park, right next to CDD.
Oh,
Boom! There you
wow.
go. And I thought, well, is that a statement or is that a statement, right? So I picked them up and moved them at least outside the park because they don't belong in
Okay.
the park. But I thought, well, okay, these guys are pretty aggressive. So I mean, ultimately, I think it's not a bad thing.
No,
Right.
because if you live in Arlington, or you live in Belmont, or you live in Watertown, you do not have the Hubway.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
Blue Bikes, which is now Motivate, which I think has got something to do with Uber. I don't
Right.
know. I can't keep
And,
track
and,
of
and
all this.
fundamentally, I think as long as you're
Yeah.
not a fool.
I've
um,
seen them parked actually okay, the bikes.
For the most part, yeah. Though I didn't like the fact
Really?
that they were
No,
basically
that-
turning park into a parking
No,
lot.
that I had never seen, so that would not be good.
But the thing is cycling, just the physics of it all, you get a wheel that's kind of good size.
Yeah.
If there are things like breaks in the road, imperfections in roadways, you can ride safely on bicycles unless you have a big gouge or a pothole or whatever that
Yeah.
can throw you off a bike.
Yeah.
Scooters, on the other hand, have wheels that are about that big.
Plus, they can go, I guess, 15 miles, which is not slow. I mean,
Right.
most bicyclists don't go 15 miles per hour,
Right.
do they?
Now, the state law actually
That's
says
what
they have to have
bothers
things
me.
like signals.
And it's motorized.
whatever.
Bicycles
And
aren't motorized.
right.
Although
So-
they have those too.
But the physics of it is that if you're scooting
Yeah.
along on a little scooter
Yeah.
and you have your tiny little itty bitty wheels and
Yeah.
you hit a pothole or you're riding at night because you feel like you can do whatever you
Yeah.
want and you don't see it, you can really get badly hurt.
Well, has anyone, that came up in this meeting, and I forget the details, but people have been hurt.
Yes, yeah. So the thing is at least with bicycles, the fact that the wheels are sufficiently large, you can kind of average out the
Well,
shock.
the most
of
important
most
thing
road
is it's not motorized, most bikes.
Right, so you have
So
good
it
control.
makes, is the driver is making it go.
Yeah.
This one, you can,
Yeah.
do they have lights? Are they required to have lights? Because they don't
Under-
have brake lights or something. There's something they don't have
okay,
that
so
Cambridge wants
so
them to have.
The way it's been explained to me
Yeah.
is that even if you believe that the scooters were a wonderful, wonderful thing, state law, unless it's changed,
Yeah,
does require, because it's a motorized vehicle, it's supposed to have things like turn signals and brake lights.
right, and it doesn't have
It
that,
doesn't have
but they're
any of that.
working on it supposedly. There was
Well-
a representative from Bird and I guess from Lime maybe? I
Well, they
forget.
can either work on that or they can try and lobby to
Yeah,
change
Bird
state
and
law.
Lime
Yeah.
were there.
But so that's why it's technically illegal. There
Right.
was no exclusivity contract with scooters. There was for the bikes, so that was their issue. Why, if we have a city contract giving pretty much a exclusive right to Hubway/Blue Bikes, and then your aunt and you start dropping your machines down
Okay,
on us,
but I think
that's a separate
somebody
issue.
brought up, I don't know if it was Craig Kelly or somebody brought up, what about you can buy an electric scooter?
That's right.
So then who governs that?
If you buy an electric scooter, you're still required to have the turn signals or whatever.
Okay.
So you would be operating
But-
if you're doing on a public roadway,
Yeah.
You would not be in compliance
So
with
there,
state
is there
law.
any state law about something being motorized and requiring a license?
There are differences, and in fact, even with
Maybe it has to be updated.
motorcycles versus scooters
Right.
like Vespas, whatever, there's a
Right,
certain
'cause-
number size of
yeah.
the engine beyond which you have certain requirements, like you have to get a license plate,
Okay,
and below which you don't. There's always been an issue about who can use a bike lane. Well, truth is, if you're driving a little motorbike, like a Vespa, it's totally legal to use bike lanes.
really?
Yes.
So it seems to me that the legislation's gonna have to change a little to accommodate these new kinds
Hey,
of
what-
motorized vehicles,
But
right?
aren't we the bluest of blue states, the most progressive point in the
Yeah.
universe? Isn't the state legislature ahead of every curve?
Yeah,
aren't they
right.
way
sure
ahead
were.
of
Did you
everything?
see that article
I'm
today?
sure they
that
must
was-
have passed
kept
all these changes
bashing
last
Baker
week.
and blaming him for everything, and they said, well, wait, have we had a Democratic
You know,
legislature for the last 12
Political
years?
rhetoric is
I know.
pure entertainment. It's it's like, well, Charlie Baker now owns the tea. It's anything
right.
that's wrong with it is due
Yeah.
to Charlie Baker.
Right, but
and any failure
it had
to-
nothing to do with
Right.
Deval
Never mind the
Patrick or
fact
any
that
of the administration.
just deferred maintenance has been the rule for
Right.
decades.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's all Charlie, right? So anyway,
well.
I don't believe a word of political rhetoric, and I do find it kind of entertaining how people try and take credit, give
I
blame.
know. You gotta just delve into it a little more and not just take these sound bites and stuff,
What?
you know?
What? Education? What a concept.
Oh,
There you go.
God.
There
All
you
right,
go.
so,
All right. So actually, one
Yeah.
thing we talked about last week, let's just get this out of the way quick.
what?
All right, so we talked a little bit about the elections. Let's not go all over there, but the 3rd congressional district,
Oh, right, yes.
right, which
Got
was
decided yesterday.
was
Yes.
decided. The results of the
Finally,
recount
recount.
were in. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
the original had Lori Trehan. This is up in Lowell.
Right.
Lawrence,
89,000
etc.
total votes cast, and she got
Right.
18,000 something.
Exactly. So the
Yeah.
thing is the margin between these two candidates
Mm-hmm.
was only 122 votes. After the recount, it went up to 145. Yeah.
Right, right.
Um,
And his went up 27.
And Danco
Yeah.
conceded, and so it's all done, and Lori Trehan will be the congresswoman for there.
Yay.
But the interesting thing, and we talked about it last week, was the sort of the fundamental flaw in the system. And again, no criticism of the candidate who won.
No.
Wonderful candidate. But
No.
the idea that a person who should be winning an election with about 21% of the
Right.
votes,
Right.
when almost 80% of the votes were for somebody else, is
Right.
something that
Yep.
I think people should think about.
Yes, not good.
Not good. And and it's not the first time this sort of thing has happened. But there are really two fundamental flaws in this one. One is the fact that you don't have ranked choice ballots that enable you to actually get something more close to a majoritarian type of winner,
Right.
right? Somebody who's
Your vote counts because you can rate your choices.
Right.
Rank your choices.
Right. So the thing is, votes would eventually pool, and at least in the very final round, you would have one candidate who has the majority of all continuing
Right.
ballots would be the winner, and it would probably be at least 40%, and hopefully maybe even a majority at that point, an actual majority.
But
at
it
that
would
point.
require them getting different software, different way of elections.
Right. So the thing
different
is,
everything.
yeah. So I mean, if you want to, you can. I mean, as we know in Cambridge, most of the voting hardware, the ballot machines, are perfectly capable of recording whole ballot images. And by images, I don't mean pictures. I mean just all the voter data.
Exactly. So you see the first.
So you could record all the rankings, and then it's a very simple software solution to actually do the transfers to come up with a majoritarian winner. And
so you said New York Times had an article when? Today
so
or yesterday?
yesterday,
Okay.
so New York Times had an article. It says fans of ranked voting see an opportunity in Massachusetts, and this is kind of how it works, honestly.
Yeah, you take something like that gets. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, alternate voting systems, a lot of people didn't think about for years and years and years, and then we had this sort of fiasco in Florida in the year 2000, and suddenly everybody became interested in flawed voting systems.
Yeah. Butterfly
And that led
ballots.
to the
Oh my
Help
gosh,
America
right,
Vote
yeah.
Act, which was kind of
Yeah.
a Republican light version of what should have
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
But it certainly, that's what reignited the whole discussion about things like transferable ballots and ranked choice voting. We talked about that 25 years ago, but honestly, the fiasco in Florida helped us along.
Yeah.
And the thing is that every time you have a kind of a controversial election, where the issue is not the candidate so much as it is the system that
method.
elects them.
Yeah.
It actually helps those of us who are trying to promote the
Which is what happened
consideration
in
of these
Maine
systems.
with Governor, what's his name, LePage?
LePage, yeah. So
He
there are
was
certain,
voted in at 38%,
Right.
even though there were several candidates, right?
yeah. Actually, one of the examples that people pointed out for years and years and years as sort of a textbook example of why you should have ranked ballots
Yeah.
is in New York City, where I grew up. We had a Senate candidate, a Senate election, where there was a member of the Conservative Party, James Buckley, who was William F. Buckley's brother.
Oh, I remember that.
We had, I think it was was it? I'm trying to actually figure.
What year was this?
It was in the 1960s, late 60s, or it could have been early 70s. But the thing is, it was one where it was almost an even three-way split, and I believe William Buckley's brother, James Buckley, who was absolutely not favored by maybe 60% of the voters, would not have wanted him to be elected under any circumstance. He won the election.
The election or a primary?
That was the election, because
That was the election.
that was a Democrat. It was a Conservative Party, a Democrat, and a Republican.
Was this state Senate or federal?
This was.
I don't remember a Senator
This was the
Buckley, was
United States Senate. Yes.
So he served?
He was the United States Senator.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. Well, I was.
It may have
Older
even
than
been.
you, but,
it may very well have even been the seat vacated by Robert F. Kennedy, but I don't know for sure. Right. But
Well, he died in 68.
68. So,
It
but
could
this may have been 1970.
before
So it
that.
may have been the next
Sure,
one. Maybe to
sure, yeah.
succeed Jacob Javits. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But the thing is that there are these textbook examples of where the candidate who, by at least some form of logic, should not be the one to be elected is exactly the one who is elected.
Huh.
And these kind of perversions are sort of good in a way, because I don't know how else you explain to people that there's a problem, except to show them like that.
But what I'm not understanding is, you said this was the general election. There were 3 candidates. So how did
In
he
New
not?
York.
How was he not favored if somehow he got more than the other 2?
He did get more than the other 2, but it was sort of like 38 to 36 to 32.
Well, it sounds to me like people didn't
Something
like
like
any
that.
of them, maybe. I don't know. But okay, I understand. That's a good point.
But the Democrat.
it probably would have been a Republican I bet,
um,
that would have gotten in, no?
Yeah, and I may even, I remember once where there was in New York City was kind of, New York State actually, they have fusion, so you can be nominated by multiple parties and
That's
be on both
good.
tickets.
I like that.
So you could have a Republican who's also a liberal, like John Lindsay was mayor in New York,
Okay.
he was both. So you have these very bizarre things that can happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is that
So that,
the
there's a
third
reason to have it,
CD
yeah.
here in Massachusetts is now at least, I think it's the best news for the fair, what's the
Fair
group?
Fair vote.
Fair, no, it's Voter Choice Massachusetts.
Well, that's the Voter
which is-
Choice Massachusetts,
yeah.
and then Fair Vote's the national.
The national, right,
organization.
right. But the thing is that now you can point to something which
Sure.
is,
Here's
really
an
obvious
example.
then. And
Although, thankfully, a good person got it.
well, listen,
but-
even the
and
last
she-
really
who
weird one we
knows,
got,
yeah.
Mike Capuano one, this was 20 years ago, and that was like a
Oh, that
8 or
was
10
a
person.
multiple,
Yeah, and
right.
he squeaked in with about 20% too.
That's a good
so,
point. You're
sometimes
right.
what happens is this very weird phenomena where
Yeah.
in the last, at the 11th hour, figuratively speaking, what happens is voters go, uh-oh,
Yeah,
and
I
they
have
start
to decide.
they
Yeah.
start bailing out from candidates who they know are not going to win because they don't want to be voting for the spoiler. So they start to glom onto a candidate who may be better.
But in this case, they would be able to do, okay, I really like this person the best, but this one isn't bad.
That's
and then,
right. And then
you don't have
allow
to
the
vote the whole
system-
slate. You can
right.
just do maybe
allow
four.
the system itself
Right.
to make the change for you, so you don't have to sort of
I
do this
think it's a
guessing
great
game.
idea.
Yeah. So anyway, so the New York Times covered it. So it's nice. I'm
Good.
kind of pleased.
And I mentioned WBUR in their local 3 o'clock show
Yeah.
also had somebody from Fair
Yeah.
Vote talking about it too. So.
Yep. Yeah. So but that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Actually,
So-
one other thing I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
You went to so this is a little bit of guesswork here, but you went to a recycling advisory committee.
Right, their
meeting.
their first
Now,
monthly meeting.
And I think
This came out today to every resident, right?
yeah. So I
Yeah.
got one yesterday. It
Yeah.
was like the Cambridge Life, which is like a periodical that they put around,
Put
but
out,
it
yeah.
has the article "Help Us Reduce Contamination."
In our recycling,
it's
by
sort of-
recycling.
it's like the
It's a state
recycling right
initiative, the
thing.
recycling toolkit, and I think they're gonna be sending out things to residents about reminding them what is, really
Yeah.
shouldn't be recycled.
Right.
But also, some of us have smartphones. So
Right.
you can
Not
get
me.
the Zero Waste app, which is really that, Zero Waste Cambridge.
All right.
Download it, it'll tell you everything that can be
Right,
recycled.
but if I may
Yeah.
guess a little bit of the future here, we
Yes.
went through a period where all the rage was let's increase the volume of
Which
recyclables.
was how single stream
Right,
recycling
single
came
stream,
about.
that's
One
right.
toter
More,
made it
more.
easier.
Right, but the problem is that ultimately there have to be end markets for the goods.
Right, which there had been, but
And
let's
there had
face it, we were sending them to China,
Right.
India, Vietnam, but mostly China.
Yep.
In all of those, back in those big, what do you call them?
They bailed up the paper.
Yeah, but
or
what
sea
are,
boxes,
no, what are those big things that go across the ocean?
containerized cargo.
Thank you, because
But we
with
also
all
call
the
them
goods
sea
that we
boxes.
buy, they're
Yeah.
empty when on the way back, so we would just put all our stuff in. on the
That's
way
it.
back.
That's right. So
And they
it
were
was
sorting it,
economical.
but China has become more
Picky.
responsible about pollution and more picky. They closed down a lot of these mom and pop operations that used to pick through this trash.
Yeah, dangerously sometimes.
And they are developing their own infrastructure, which we should have been doing
That's
here,
right.
and we are going to be doing
Yeah, I
it, but it's
think-
going to take a few years.
Right.
Yeah.
Economics will, I think,
Determine
ultimately,
it, but right
push
now
that.
it's a problem because the
It is a
stuff's
problem.
being
So-
loading E.L. Harvey. He's been interviewed all over, Ben Harvey. It's being incinerated, some of it. I think
Yeah.
the state, gave them a temporary disposal.
Right. So anyway, I guess something to keep in mind is that
Yes.
there are certain things that you shouldn't be recycling
Anyway,
like
styrofoam,
clothes hangers,
clothes
styrofoam.
textiles, electronics. There are
I mean,
places for these. Just
there,
go to.
there are other ways
yeah.
you can deal with them, right? But
Plastic
don't,
bags, number one.
terrible thing. To
But
put
take
in
them
there.
to the drop off. It is
Right.
recyclable, but not in that bin.
But the thing is there are
Yeah.
other materials which
Right, that
are
we've been
accepted,
taking, that
but
we really-
which
Right.
we may see restrictions on. So,
Which are
for example, if you take
Yeah.
things like containers that contain liquids like
like
a
milk
wax-
and orange juice
Right, so
and
it's
soups
plastic-
and all that stuff. It's
plastic coated paper,
right, which is a lot of our
is
stuff.
really a mixed media. It's
Right.
not paper. It's not plastic. It's mushed together,
and it's
right?
been tolerated, but
It's not great.
But it's not great.
So the
That's
city
one
has
thing
not
to watch
changed
out
the
for.
policy yet,
But it's
but
going
it
to.
may
yeah.
happen. So don't be too shocked if
Right.
down the road, even things like milk cartons that are, paper milk cartons.
Right, we used
or
to
aseptic
recycle them in the
packaging.
schools, and we're not doing it anymore. So
Right.
the kids have to learn; they have to
Yeah.
trash it. Sept juice boxes, please don't buy
Juice
those. Really, give
boxes,
your kid a
exactly.
reusable
Yeah.
something.
So anyway, so word to the wise.
Yeah.
Look down the road a little bit, and maybe even make some better choices in terms of the packaging that
Right.
you
Also,
purchase your
I've heard,
products
well, anyway, we won't get into the plastic part, but 1s and 2s and 5s are good, so. But you shouldn't always go by the number, but
in. Right.
you'll get something, but just be more wise about what you throw out
Yeah.
and what you use.
Yeah, that's right. So now it's reduce, reuse, recycle, but
Well-
really recycle right.
Yeah, I think that's gone, but
Yep.
anyway, just go to the city's website, go to Zero Waste Cambridge, you can download the app on iTunes, anywhere, and it's very helpful.
Yeah. So
Whew,
we'll talk a little bit about city council maybe in the next half hour, but
Yeah.
because they did come back this
they
today.
did, it was a long
But
meeting.
a few other things that I found interesting at last week's sort of flurry of meetings.
Yeah,
There was one in particular that had to do with retail strategy
Oh, right.
and vacant
Yeah.
storefronts.
right, it was the
And-
final report, I don't know if it's a final,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I think it might actually have been on the way home from doing the show here. I ran into my neighbor who actually
Oh,
runs
right.
a business in Harvard Square,
Yeah,
a small business, right?
uh-huh,
And we're talking about these strategies for vacant storefronts. So what she told me was, well, there's kind of an issue here, which is that if the city says we don't like vacant storefronts, and by the way, turns out there aren't as many vacant storefronts
No.
as you
we
might
actually
think.
have a lower, it's 3% versus around, it's 5, and in the country it's 9, but it's where they are.
It's where they
It's the
are.
perception,
Yep.
and because they're so
Yeah.
visible.
That's right. But we
Porter
don't really have
Square,
many.
yeah.
So,
Right.
but what my neighbor told me was that, well, there was some concern that if the city wanted to address temporary vacancies by inserting little what they call pop-ups within there, that there's different types of pop-ups. If it's like a little art display or
If it's a nonprofit
or a
doing
nonprofit
more
doing
informational, it's one thing. If
Right.
it's selling goods,
Right.
it could be in conflict
And
with,
right, so
yeah.
so I actually went there and I spoke to this. And I actually
Yeah.
I made two principal points at this committee meeting, which I think were pretty well received.
yeah.
One was just to point out, like I'll give the story of my own block in mid-Cambridge,
Oh,
where
right.
in fact it was
Daycare city.
But it was vacancy,
Right.
vacancy,
Yeah.
Vacancy, coffee shop,
Right.
vacancy,
It's crossing
vacancy,
Longfellow
vacancy. It
School,
was like
yeah.
almost the entire stretch of like 6 or 7 storefronts.
Right near the
vacant.
annex, yeah.
Right? Okay, and so it's not Harvard Square, it's not Central Square. So there are places where you have a lot of vacancies. So guess what ends up being the sort of the best use and the best way to, who can afford the rents and whatever? Rock and roll daycare and Montessori schools. And if
Wait, Rock and Roll's not next to you, that's over down.
no, Rock and roll
Oh,
daycare
they
is
opened
exactly next to me.
Okay.
So the thing is, they have, it's almost like it's like a franchise operation. Daycare
Oh,
is
okay.
so expensive and
I didn't
hard
think,
to
okay, I didn't
hard
think
to
Rock and Roll
obtain.
was, but the Montessori was.
Rock and Roll Daycare now has 2 spaces on Prospect Street.
Right.
They just opened a second one.
On Prospect.
On
I just know the
Prospect.
one on the corner. Where's
There's
the
one
other
on the corner
Yeah.
at Broadway and Prospect. There's another one that they just opened further down on Prospect. And then the one they opened up last fall, I think it was right next door to me on Broadway.
But how
and
do
then
you
there are
know what it
others, too.
costs there? Did you actually
You can
find
look it up
out?
on a website. So,
And did you?
I have. I think
Oh,
it's up getting close to like 18, 19 grand a kid
what?
for the year.
Whoa.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you actually look at the cost of providing daycare through almost every, that's kind
They
of what
must
it
take
is.
very young. They must take infants.
They take very young.
Because young
yes,
it costs
right.
money.
So
Yeah.
you can also get a lot of little ones in there too. So it's a
Well,
lot
no,
more money.
there's laws about that.
I know.
Yeah.
But the thing is but I love having all the kids all around. But it's become retail is basically being is hard to make work, but daycare facilities
Can
and
work.
Montessori schools, whatever, seems to
Well,
be
if it
something
fills a
that-
need,
It does. It
know?
does. So, but I wanted to point out when they were saying like, well, we don't seem to have that many vacancies. I said, well, part of the reason is that daycare facilities are replacing what used to be
but
retail.
what about banks, cell phone stores? No.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of a big issue in some of the big
Tattoo
squares.
parlors, where do those?
I don't know, I can't
afford the
explain
rent?
it,
I
right.
can't explain that one.
But the second point I
Yeah,
made was
about the
really
pop-ups.
about with my neighbor
Yeah.
is that if you're running a place that is actually selling kind of novelty things and interesting stuff, and the reality about a lot of retail is that the holiday season is kind of when you make a lot of the money for the year to cover the rent. And then if the city was not to be wise, now I think they will be wise, but so I made the point that if you're gonna allow somebody who's gonna come in as a retail short-term thing, lower rent or whatever, because you're trying to fill vacancies, and then they end up basically just taking the business, you could end up causing another business to go out of business.
But on the other hand,
And have another
okay,
vacancy.
But I just thought of something. Some people say if you have one furniture store, but then you have two, then it's more likely people are going to go
Actually,
to both.
clustering is a good
Clustering.
idea.
So it could be, and also around the holidays, there's a lot of pop-ups that we've had.
I know, but,
Even-
but I think, and so I'm not saying no, but I
It's
am
just something to
saying,
consider.
yeah, so you gotta be really
It
careful.
depends on how long the lease is. Yeah,
Right.
Right.
Exactly. But, but anyway, sometimes with their zeal to be wonderful problem solvers, city
Hmm. Yeah.
councilors will sometimes rush through what they think is a good thing, only to get pushback or
But that
realize
wasn't
something
the
was a
only
mistake.
Solution, though, right?
No, not at all.
It was
not
more
at
to have
all.
artwork above it.
Yeah, oh
and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah. But the thing is that I just found it was sort of
Yeah.
an interesting meeting for that, in that respect, right?
But did they decide that they did want some kind of report on where the vacancies are, or is that in there?
Yes,
No, I think
actually,
that's in there
there's
somewhere.
a city
Yeah.
council order at last night's meeting, basically, I think it grew out of the committee
I
meeting
thought
that
that was
basically
charter
says,
righted.
we wanna, yeah,
Okay.
but the thing is that everybody in the city hall kinda knows what's being asked for.
Okay, so that is to be more specific about where they are, or,
Yeah, I
Track.
think city staff already got the message at the
Right.
committee that they, let's get some quantification of the problem here.
right, okay.
So, I mean, I think, I don't know that I would be comfortable in a future where retail just became online retail and everything else was
Oh,
just
absolutely right.
experiential
But I
spaces
think
and
they
whatever.
did quote other cities that actually charge the property owners, depending on how long it's
Yeah.
vacant.
And there may be
And to put
some
something in
sense in
like that.
that, but the
Yeah.
proposal that the city council came up with a couple of years ago, which was basically charge them half of the value of the property, like,
Oh, no,
It
that
was
wouldn't work.
ridiculous,
No,
so.
I don't think they're talking about that.
anyway, we just had about
Okay.
out for now, so we'll be back in a
Next
couple of minutes, so see you then.
All right.